Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. On March 18th, 2025, on the island of Oahu, Hawaii, a woman, an accomplished engineer with a PhD, set out on a short hike with her husband to the scenic summit of Nuuanu Known for its stunning views and steep, challenging trail, the location was chosen for a memorable birthday photo, but something went terribly wrong. Tourists nearby reported hearing screams, emergency services were contacted, medical personnel arrived on the scene and rushed the injured woman to the hospital while her husband vanished into the forest. As authorities launched their investigation, a hidden story began to unravel, one no one was prepared for. Gerhard Koenig was born and raised in South Africa. From a young age, he had his sights set on becoming a physician. Calm, disciplined, and precise, he earned admission to a top medical school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There, he completed his residency and started working as an anesthesiology specialist, an area that demands not only sharp focus but complete emotional control. For nearly a decade, he worked at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, one of the nation's leading hospitals. He built a spotless reputation. Patients appreciated his meticulous care, colleagues respected his intelligence and professionalism, and students described him as a patient and passionate educator. Alongside his clinical work, he served as a guest lecturer and assistant instructor in the university's medical department, helping train future doctors. At that point in his life, Gerhard was also a father. He had a son named Emil from a previous relationship. He rarely discussed his past or his former partner, but he did speak about being involved in his son's life and making an effort to stay engaged in his upbringing. Arielle Koenig was born in the United States. Unlike Gerhard, she took an entirely different career path, engineering. Her field was highly technical and specialized, nuclear engineering. After earning her doctorate, she quickly established herself as a top-tier expert. Arielle wasn't just intellectually sharp. She also had a unique ability to lead projects with exceptional efficiency, making her a standout professional in her community. Friends and co-workers described her as smart, focused, and grounded, a rare mix of analytical brilliance and genuine warmth. She was driven, goal-oriented, and determined, yet always approachable and kind-hearted. Despite the intense demands of her profession, she remained generous with her time and energy. At the time, Arielle and Gerhard lived in different parts of the world. They didn't know each other. Their lives hadn't crossed, neither professionally nor personally. Arielle had never heard of the South African anesthesiologist, and Gerhard had no idea about the brilliant American nuclear engineer. Each was carving their own path, building a career and a life in their own way. Their meeting was still to come. Jerry and Arielle first met in 2018 at a professional event in Pennsylvania, where people from academic and research fields had gathered. Their initial interaction was brief but memorable. Jerry was immediately struck by Arielle's sharp intellect and quick thinking, while she noted his calm demeanor, quiet confidence, and sense of humor. A few weeks later, they ran into each other again, this time at a lecture focused on interdisciplinary research connecting medicine and engineering. That second meeting led to regular communication. At first, it was a friendly exchange of ideas, but it soon deepened into something more personal. They shared a similar worldview, a mutual passion for science, and a common desire for stability. These shared values brought them closer together. Their relationship progressed quickly, but it felt natural. That same year, they got married, taking the step with full awareness and no hesitation. 2 years later, in 2020, they welcomed their first son, Olin. In 2023, their second son, Vago, was born. With only a small age gap between the two boys, Jerry and Arielle's lives shifted. Family became the center of everything. Despite his demanding career in healthcare, Jerry continued practicing medicine, while Arielle temporarily stepped back from her professional pursuits to spend more time with their sons. Taking care of the boys became their top priority. Photos shared on social media showed what looked like a picture-perfect life. Gerhard appeared composed, confident, and always smiling. Ariel looked calm and content, often holding the younger son in her arms. The boys, dressed in matching light-colored shirts, could be seen playing on the beach or building sandcastles. The captions were short and neutral, free of over-the-top emotion, but clearly projecting harmony. Many who followed them online admired what seemed to be a perfectly balanced life. Neighbors described them as polite, but fairly private. There was never any noise coming from the house, no arguments, no strange behavior. They didn't often have guests over, but that didn't raise any red flags. It simply fit the image of a couple focused on work and family life. A housekeeper, a nanny, and several family friends all agreed. Outwardly, the family inspired trust. One of the people closest to them, Christina, who frequently helped care for the boys, shared that the home always felt calm, and Gerhardt seemed attentive and caring toward both Ariel and the children. But by mid-2023, subtle changes began to surface, small enough that most wouldn't have noticed. Ariel became more reserved in conversations. When asked personal questions, her responses were brief, sometimes even distant. A few people noticed she looked tired, though she never shared any specific concerns. At times, she seemed mentally absent from conversations, her gaze tense and far away. Gerhardt, meanwhile, maintained his usual politeness, but gradually grew more distant from those around him. There were no overt signs of conflict between the couple. On the surface, everything appeared normal, but in hindsight, it became clear. The emotional distance had already started to grow. It wasn't about arguments, it was about a slow unraveling of connection, trust, and closeness. Behind the beachside smiles and backyard barbecues, cracks were beginning to show. But they were so subtle that even those closest to them had no idea. Something was already breaking apart inside this seemingly ideal family. By the summer of 2023, noticeable changes began to surface in Gerhardt Koenig's behavior. These were no longer just occasional signs of stress or fatigue. They became a consistent pattern. His relationship with Ariel grew increasingly tense, marked by persistent suspicion and unfounded doubts about her loyalty. Ariel gave no reason for concern. She led a private, home-based lifestyle, mostly working remotely and rarely interacting with anyone outside her immediate circle. Still, even a simple business message or a short phone call could trigger anxiety and emotional outbursts from Gerhardt. Interrogations became routine. He would demand explanations for texts, emails, even voice calls. He insisted on reading her messages, listening in on conversations, and often accused her of withholding information. At times, he launched into lengthy monologues, claiming she was hiding something. Everyday situations turned into grounds for suspicion. His tone grew cold and accusatory. When Ariel tried to push back or express that she felt overwhelmed, he quickly shifted tactics to apply emotional pressure. That need for control expanded into other areas of their life. Gerhardt kept track of her whereabouts, asked detailed questions about who she had spoken with, and became noticeably concerned when she was out of the house longer than expected. He would sometimes appear suddenly during her video calls, eavesdrop on conversations, or ask leading questions afterward. Yet to outsiders, he maintained the appearance of being calm and composed. No one suspected what was happening behind closed doors. This tense environment led to abrupt mood swings. Within the same day, he could shift from silent withdrawal to bursts of frustration. In public, he remained polite and courteous, but at home, he allowed himself to express harsh remarks, sarcasm, and veiled threats. Sometimes he disappeared for hours without explanation, only to return as if nothing had happened. These emotional highs and lows left Ariel constantly on edge, never sure which version of her husband she'd be facing next. On top of the psychological strain, the tension began to affect their physical relationship. Gerhardt started insisting on closeness, disregarding Ariel's comfort or emotional state. He took any hesitation as a personal insult. At first, Ariel didn't have the words to describe what was happening. It wasn't until later that she began to fully understand the emotional weight and painful reality of the situation. She kept it all to herself, not even confiding in close friends, fearing it would completely shatter the fragile sense of normalcy she was clinging to. There were times when Gerhardt used physical force if she resisted. These incidents occurred in isolation, with no witnesses and no space for her to speak out. Toward the end of 2023, Ariel tried to change the dynamic. She suggested they start seeing a family counselor. A few sessions did take place. During them, Gerhardt was polite, seemingly cooperative, and said all the right things. He acknowledged the strain in their relationship, but placed the blame squarely on Ariel, citing her lack of openness and emotional distance. Outside the therapist's office, however, nothing changed. The pressure continued as before. At the same time, Ariel began attending private counseling sessions. She spoke about anxiety, a growing fear of her husband, and a feeling of deep emotional isolation. Her therapist noted troubling signs, but Ariel never explicitly described what was happening at home. She wasn't ready to admit how serious things had become. In her mind, it was still just a rough patch, something that could be worked through. She didn't want to break up the family. She didn't want to hurt her sons. She wasn't ready to make anything public. By early 2024, Ariel was living in a state of constant tension. She avoided sensitive topics, made efforts not to be alone with Gerhardt in certain rooms, and limited physical contact. Still, she held on to hope that things might improve. Leaving the marriage felt like too heavy a decision. There was too much at stake: the boys, the home, their shared world. She continued enduring it, because she couldn't see any other way forward. But the fear kept growing. On March 18, 2025, Ariel Koenig turned 36. That morning, Gerhardt told her he had planned a surprise, a quick trip to the neighboring island of Oahu. The boys would stay home with the nanny. He suggested they take the day for themselves to unwind and step away from daily routines. One of the stops included a hike to the Nuuanu Pali Lookout, a place known for its breathtaking views and a steep, slippery trail that had a reputation for being risky. The climb took longer than expected. The air was heavy with moisture, the summit covered in thick fog, and the wind was picking up. The path ran along the edge of a rocky cliff. With no railings and an elevation of over 1,200 feet, there was no room for error. Ariel felt uneasy, but Gerhardt kept reassuring her that everything was fine. He suggested they take a selfie with the view behind them. It seemed like an ordinary moment. They moved closer to the edge and stood side by side. Ariel was standing with her back to the cliff, facing Gerhardt. They had just taken the photo. She began to feel a wave of panic: height, gusty wind, the slick ground beneath her shoes. She told him she wanted to step back from the edge. As she took a half step toward the trail and turned slightly to the side, Gerhardt suddenly lunged forward, grabbed her shoulders, and shoved her forcefully, straight toward the drop. Caught off guard, she lost her balance. Her feet slid on the wet rock, but her survival instinct kicked in. She dropped to her knees and grabbed the ground. For a split second, she hoped it was some kind of horrible prank. But when she looked up at her husband's face, she saw the truth. There was no smile, no sign of playfulness, just cold focus and intensity. He wasn't joking. He was trying to end her life. As she struggled, Gerhardt reached into his waistpack. Moments later, he pulled out a preloaded injector filled with a clear liquid. Ariel immediately realized this wasn't for medical help. It was a tool meant to incapacitate her. She managed to snatch it from his hand and fling it away. Enraged, Gerhardt grabbed a rock, roughly the size of a fist, and struck her on the head. Then, again, and again. The blows landed on her face, forehead, and temple. Ariel tried to protect herself, screamed, fought back. Her thumb was broken in the struggle, blood covered her face. Despite her injuries, Ariel kept fighting. In a final act of resistance, she bit Gerhardt on the shoulder with all the strength she had left. He loosened his grip for just a moment. She screamed, loud and desperate. Her cries were heard. Two hikers happened to be nearby on the trail. One of them spotted a man crouched over a woman, holding a bloodied rock. The other quickly pulled out a phone and called emergency services. The moment Gerhardt saw the witnesses, he backed off immediately, turned around and disappeared into the woods, pushing through dense underbrush. An emergency response was launched right away at the cliff's summit. The hikers provided exact coordinates to first responders. Paramedics were the first to arrive, and airlifted Ariel Koenig in critical condition. Her face and head were covered in blood. She was in shock and partially disoriented. At the emergency room, doctors documented multiple head injuries, including deep lacerations on the forehead and scalp caused by a blunt object, most likely a rock. Her face was bruised and scraped. One of the wounds required several stitches. There were also contusions all over her body and marks on her shoulders and arms, consistent with being grabbed and restrained. Her hands had scrapes and broken nails, signs that she had tried to hold on or fight back. Her right thumb was fractured, likely from attempting to shield her head from the blows. Medical staff also noted signs of extreme physical exhaustion, dehydration, and emotional shock. Along with the external trauma, Ariel exhibited symptoms of a mild traumatic brain injury, headache, dizziness, and sensitivity to light. Although the assault was brutal, she had no life-threatening wounds. Her condition was described as serious but stable. After initial treatment, Ariel was admitted to the trauma unit for observation. Specialists in psychological recovery and support for survivors of aggression began working with her immediately. When the Honolulu Police Department received the report of an attempted murder, they classified the incident as critical and launched a full-scale search operation. The area surrounding Nuuanu Pali was secured. A helicopter, K-9 units, and additional ground teams were dispatched. The terrain, dense foliage, steep inclines, and rugged topography made the search especially challenging. Gerhard Koenig had already fled before law enforcement arrived. He moved on foot, avoiding trails and navigating through forested terrain. He stayed away from towns, never approached any roads, and did not contact anyone. It became clear that this was not a spontaneous act. It was a deliberate, premeditated attack followed by an intentional escape. In the hours that followed, there was no word from him. He left no explanation, made no attempt to return home. Investigators quickly realized this wasn't an outburst. It was a carefully executed act with a plan to vanish. Several hours into the manhunt, Gerhardt made the only known communication that would later be entered into the case file. He connected via video call with his son Emil from his first marriage. During the call, Gerhardt was visibly disheveled, his clothes stained with blood and dirt, his face drawn and exhausted. He told Emil, word for word, "I tried to kill Ariel, but she got away." He also mentioned plans to end his own life, implying he might jump from a cliff. Emil attempted to calm him, but the call was short. In the background, the hum of a helicopter could be heard. Police were already sweeping the area. That video call became a critical moment in the case. It included a direct admission and revealed the suspect's unstable state of mind. Given the mention of self-harm and potential danger to others, authorities escalated the response. The search area was widened, with special attention given to rugged spots, dense brush, cliffs, and ravines. Approximately 8 hours after the search began, around 7 p.m., a patrol unit spotted a man lying in the bushes off a side road. He matched the suspect's description. Officers approached and ordered him to show his hands. He did not comply. He was quickly restrained, handcuffed, and searched. No weapon was found on him, but his clothes were still stained with blood and dirt. His hair was matted and his face weathered by exposure. It was Gerhard Koenig. He didn't resist arrest, but refused to explain where he had been or what he had done after the attack. He was transported to the police station and formally arrested on suspicion of attempted second-degree murder. That evening, Gerhardt's photo in handcuffs was broadcast by local and national news outlets. His reputation as a respected physician unraveled within hours. Reports of his arrest were brief but striking. A trusted medical partner in Maui, now suspected of a violent assault on his wife. Footage showed him covering his face with a document as officers escorted him. Images that quickly circulated in the media. Medical staff, patients, and colleagues who had only known him as a competent professional now saw him accused of a serious crime. While Gerhardt remained in custody, Ariel was recovering in her hospital room. Though still healing from severe injuries, her condition was stable. She gave a preliminary statement to law enforcement. Her account was consistent with witness reports and supported by physical evidence found at the scene. To investigators, it was clear. This was a premeditated and intentional act. His escape attempt, the confession to his son, the physical evidence of the struggle, all of it formed a clear narrative. Even after Gerhardt's arrest, detectives continued working the scene. The first priority was collecting key evidence. A blood-stained rock, matching the size and shape Ariel had described, was found near the trail. Nearby, in the brush, officers recovered an injector containing traces of a clear liquid. Preliminary tests suggested it was a sedative. The location of both items lined up with Ariel's version of events. Eyewitnesses who were near the scene during the attack confirmed they saw a man crouched over a woman, holding a rock. One had called emergency services, the other began approaching the scene. Their accounts further supported Ariel's statement. Gerhardt had not been trying to help. He had broken off the attack and fled the moment others appeared. Everything pointed to a clear, determined attempt to finish what he had started, with no hesitation. Once Ariel's condition had stabilized, she returned home. 3 days later, she decided to check the garage, specifically an area where Gerhardt often stored personal items. In a hard-to-reach corner behind some old boxes, she found a waste pack. Inside were items that clearly did not belong outside of a medical facility. Among the contents was his hospital ID badge, several unused syringes, vials of medication, and a sealed package of anesthetic. One of the ampules was labeled Diprivan, the brand name for propofol. Ariel immediately turned the bag over to the police. The contents were confiscated and sent for analysis. Investigators confirmed that several of the substances were not meant for personal possession, and that keeping them outside a controlled medical environment violated current regulations. The discovery raised serious questions. How and why had a practicing physician taken such substances from his workplace? Propofol is a powerful sedative, commonly used in surgical settings. It induces deep sedation and must be administered under strict medical supervision. Its use outside of a clinic carries significant risk. Investigators concluded that Gerhardt had not simply stored the drug, he had intentionally brought it with him. The possibility that he planned to use it during the attack was very real. This supported the theory that he had access to tools capable of temporarily incapacitating his target. None of the items in the bag had been properly logged. The clinic where Gerhardt worked had no record of any authorized removal of those medications. This wasn't just a violation of hospital policy. It was a serious misuse of medical authority. All of this strengthened the prosecution's case. Gerhardt had both the intent and the means to carry out a planned criminal act. Following her hospitalization and the initial investigation, Ariel Koenig submitted a written statement that formed the basis of a petition for a protective order. In it, she described key episodes from the past several months: systematic control by her husband, verbal humiliation, threats, and coercive behavior, both emotional and physical. She emphasized that she had lived in a constant state of fear leading up to the incident. She also admitted that she had previously refrained from contacting authorities out of concern that it would escalate his behavior and from fear that she wouldn't be believed. Only after surviving the attempt on her life did she feel ready to speak up. The court reviewed and fully granted her petition. A temporary restraining order was issued for 180 days. The order prohibited Gerhardt Koenig from contacting Ariel in any form, directly, by phone, through intermediaries, or digitally. It also barred him from approaching not only her and their sons, but also her mother, stepfather, and even the family's dog. The court justified this broad restriction by citing a high risk of repeat aggression. The fact that the suspect had already made an attempt on her life suggested that another incident could not be ruled out. Additional concern arose during the ongoing investigation. A search revealed that Gerhardt legally owned multiple firearms and also had non-lethal self-defense tools in his possession. Though Gerhardt had no previous record in legal or mental health systems, his phone call with his son, during which he spoke of intentions to harm himself, was interpreted as a sign of psychological instability. The court took all circumstances into account. The potential threat to others was deemed credible, and the safety of the survivor was given top priority. At the same time, legal proceedings concerning Gerhardt's professional status began. Following the filing of official charges, the leadership of the medical institution where he had worked suspended him from all duties. His medical license was placed on hold, and his access to clinical systems was revoked. Within days, the state medical board initiated a formal process to revoke his license to practice. The grounds were clear: a pending criminal investigation and misuse of medical knowledge and substances to cause harm. Additionally, financial restrictions were put in place. By court order, Gerhardt lost access to all shared bank accounts and property, including the house, vehicles, and investment portfolios. This move aimed to both protect the family's financial stability and prevent the possibility of funding a potential escape. The case quickly attracted attention far beyond the local community. Major regional and national news outlets picked up the story. The image of a respected doctor, family man, and academic was in stark contrast to the charges brought against him. People who had known Gerhardt professionally were stunned. He had always come across as composed, rational, and professional. Colleagues, patients, neighbors, all said he had never raised any suspicions. That sharp contrast between his public persona and his private actions had the most profound impact. The public was shaken by how long signs of aggressive behavior had gone unnoticed. Within 2 weeks of Gerhardt Koenig's arrest, the case moved into active pretrial preparation. Prosecutors finalized their legal position and handed over materials to the Hawaii State Attorney's Office. Evidence was being compiled, including analysis of the recovered medical bag, the contents of the injector, and transcripts from witness interviews. At the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor stated that the attempt on Ariel's life had involved more than one method. According to the prosecution, Koenig took 3 consecutive steps to carry out the plan. He pushed Ariel toward the edge of the cliff, then tried to inject her with a sedative, and, after that, failed, struck her with a rock. The prosecutor emphasized that each of these actions, on its own, could have been fatal. Taken together, they left no doubt as to Gerhardt's intent. The case focused on the deliberate nature of the acts, their sequencing, and the suspect's medical training. The defense, on the other hand, argued there was no premeditation. Koenig's attorney claimed the incident occurred in a moment of extreme emotional stress, not as part of a calculated plan. The defense highlighted that the injuries inflicted did not cause lasting damage to vital organs or result in a concussion. In their view, the lack of fatal outcome and the relatively limited severity of injuries could suggest that he hadn't truly intended to finish the act. Additionally, the defense filed a motion to modify his custody status. They requested temporary release on bail, offering $100,000. They cited Gerhardt's clean criminal record, his profession, family ties, and the fact that he hadn't attempted to contact the survivor after his arrest. They also pointed to the confiscation of his documents and frozen accounts, arguing that escape was unlikely. It was further noted that although he was originally from South Africa, he no longer held a valid passport, eliminating the risk of international flight. The court ultimately rejected the defense's arguments. When reviewing the conditions of detention, the judge cited the seriousness of the charges, which were supported by direct evidence and eyewitness testimony. It was noted that Gerhardt had previously attempted to evade law enforcement, remaining at large for nearly 8 hours, and had admitted to the attack during a video call with his son. The judge emphasized that the accused had already demonstrated the capacity for unpredictable and dangerous actions, including threats to the survivor's life. The motion for bail was denied. Gerhardt remained in custody pending trial. While legal proceedings unfolded, Ariel Koenig focused on physical recovery and preparing to give her official testimony. Her participation was deemed essential. She was expected to confirm key details: the attempt to inject her with a sedative, the blows to her head, and the events leading up to the attack. A team of attorneys and trauma-informed counselors supported her throughout the process. Preparing for court meant not just organizing documents, but also mentally reliving the entire sequence of events. Her goal was clear: to secure justice and ensure that the man who tried to end her life would never again come near her or the boys. After being discharged from the hospital, Ariel moved into her mother's home on Maui. Medical treatment continued on an outpatient basis, while her emotional healing remained an ongoing process. Though physical scars remained, the deeper trauma was psychological. She avoided discussing the incident with Olin and Vago. They were told their father had gone away for a while. Both were too young to grasp the full reality. The family home was put up for sale. Ariel couldn't bear to stay there. Every room carried memories of fear. The community quickly rallied around her. Friends, former co-workers, and neighbors organized fundraisers to help cover her medical expenses, counseling, and daily needs. She also filed for divorce. Given the circumstances, the process moved swiftly. A separate legal motion was filed regarding the termination of Gerhardt's parental rights. Throughout all of this, Ariel maintained complete silence in the media. Her attorney asked the press to respect her privacy. She wasn't interested in publicity or public statements. Her focus was on safety. Stability for the boys became her top priority. Her new reality demanded structure. She created routines, maintained the household, continued therapy, and slowly resumed working remotely. The trial of Gerhardt Koenig is still ongoing. Despite intense public attention and a substantial body of evidence, a verdict has yet to be issued. Following his arrest and formal charge of attempted second-degree murder, Koenig entered a plea of not guilty. This set the stage for a full trial. The main proceedings officially began in June. The initial court date was scheduled for June 9th, but due to the volume of evidence and the preparation time needed by both sides, the case remains open. Witness testimonies, legal motions, and jury deliberations are all ongoing. Neither the court nor the prosecution has announced a definitive date for the verdict. So, as of late June 2025, the legal chapter of this story remains unfinished. The final judgment, and possibly a public statement from Ariel, is still to come. The public, closely following every development, waits in suspense for the conclusion of a story that began as a romantic getaway and ended in tragedy. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.